And hello, Jets fans. Well, it was good while it lasted, I guess. The New York Jets playoff hopes were dashed, losing 23-6 in Seattle for the fifth consecutive game in a row. And there is a lot to take out of this. And as you can see, Robert Saleh on the hot seat. There's so much to get into on this whole topic, on this whole team. I'll get to the ownership. I'll get to what the Jets could do this offseason. I will get to Robert Saleh, but I wanted to start off with this because it is a frustrating season. Because on the surface, the Jets are a better team. On the surface, the Jets have a better core going forward. On the surface, the Jets have a really good foundation going forward, and there was a lot of good things that had happened this year. But it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And when the Jets were in this position and had multiple opportunities to continue to move forward into the postseason and squandered multiple games and a ton of what ifs this year, Patriot game, Lions game, Jaguars game, so many what ifs on the table for this season. And look, if you have questions about this coaching staff, I get it today. If you have questions about the legitimacy of this team going forward, again, I get it today. I get the frustration. I get the pain. I get the anger. I get the anguish. I do remember saying after the Broncos game that when this team was 5-2, when news came out about Breece Hall and the ACL and then AVT being out for the season, I remember saying at that time, look, the Jets as legitimate playoff contenders just went out the window because whenever you are a team and you lose your best offensive player and your best offensive lineman, it is nearly impossible to be a legitimate contender. I did say at the time, though, this team should be able to at least make it interesting in December, which they did. Do I give this team credit for rallying at certain points? I do. Do I give this defense credit for being one of the best units in the NFL this year? I do. Do I give this coaching staff credit for seeing a lot of these young players flourish? I do. But this leads to Robert Saleh. And this leads to an interesting debate, which will be going on today, tomorrow, and into the future. Because again, the Jets find themselves at a critical crossroads. Last year, going into the 2022 draft, they had to hit a home run. And I think to the most part that they did. Now they're at a critical crossroads. Depending on what they do this offseason will determine what happens with this franchise. And unfortunately, it's at the two biggest question marks are the two biggest things you need to be a successful NFL team. And that is head coach and that is quarterback. Now, we all know about the quarterback situation. Personally, there are a lot of things I like about Robert Saleh. I think Robert Saleh has some hallmarks to make him a very good head coach. But I will say this now. Do not be surprised if the Jets make a move on Black Monday. I don't think the Jets will fire Robert Saleh. But I would also say don't be completely surprised that happens because every single coaching cycle we go through, there's always one really surprising candidate. Last year was Brian Flores with the Dolphins. There's always one head coach that we're really surprised gets let go. And I could legitimately see that being Robert Saleh for a couple of reasons. The biggest reason, of course, is Woody Johnson. Now, Woody Johnson also has a very easy out with Robert Saleh. Even though he was back from London at that point, he let his brother make the coaching decision. He let his brother be in charge of that. So Woody Johnson has a very easy out where he can say, look, I didn't hire this head coach. I want to bring in my own guy. Not saying it's right or wrong, but that could be the way he looks at it. And don't forget, Woody is an owner that is very active. And you cannot tell me that one thing that is sticking in his craw today is seeing all the headlines and all the great press about the New York Giants, who, let's be fair, I don't think the Giants have a better roster. I think the Jets have a better core. I think the Jets have better young talent. But the New York Jets also are probably looking across town at the Giants and going, the Giants were dysfunctional with coaches. And there's this notion you have to give coaches 3 or 4 years. And I am one of those people that preaches patience. But you don't think the Jets, in part of their mind, are going, well, the Giants kept just cycling through coaches and just going and getting them out until they got the right one. And it looks like they have a really good head coach in Brian Daboll. Could that play a factor into that? Where the Jets look at the Giants and go, well, they cycled through head coaches. We just have to make sure we find the right one, or we just keep going until we get the right head coach. The other thing, too, is how the season ended. Because the Jets, again, and the state of this fan base is not good for Woody Johnson. Because if this team made the playoffs, even if they limped in, the perception around this team would have changed dramatically. But again, here we are in December. Despite all the good things that have happened to the Jets this year, the national perception of the Jets is Jets are still a mess at quarterback. Jets are still a laughingstock. Jets are still a team that blew a 7-4 record and lost 5 straight. And the longest playoff drought in the NFL will continue. Because this fan base, rightfully so, is pissed off. This fan base, rightfully so, is frustrated. And look, a part of me gives a lot of respect to this coaching staff because on the one hand, do the Jets have arguably the worst quarterback situation and quarterback play in the NFL this season? Yeah, I think that they did. And the fact that they were in playoff contention with the quarterback situation that they had, I do think shows that this coaching staff has some merit. But then that also goes back to another point, which is, well, is it the quarterbacks or is it the coaching staff elevating the quarterbacks? I think it's more on the quarterback play, but that also enters the discussion. And you look right now at the New York Jets, and I'm just saying, I like Robert Saleh and a lot of things he does. But you look at this home stretch down the stretch. He doesn't seem to have the energy that he did in San Francisco. And Tyler Conklin saying that this team came out flat is embarrassing. And let's also not take that into account. Like, the effort of this team the last couple of weeks has been bad. And this isn't just the team playing out the stretch. These were games where the Jets had to win. And the Jets, we thought their season was over after Thursday Night Football. The Jets got a gift the next weekend from the football gods where basically the Jets had to win 2 football games to make it to the postseason. The New York Jets, everything broke correctly. The Jets would have an extended bye. The Jets would have extra time to prepare. And they came out and looked flat and unprepared. That cannot happen. And look, this team has played well in the fourth quarter this year. But they have gone off to some very slow starts. And that's concerning with this coaching staff. Because in 1 year with the Giants, I have seen a dramatic change. In year 2, there's things I like about Saleh. I really do. But then you see the time management issues. I see him handling players well with the off the field, but then you're thinking to yourself, Zach Wilson looks completely lost on Thursday Night Football, and the Jets didn't make a change till late. Did they wait too late to make a change in that game? Did the Jets make a mistake by not elevating Chris Streveler earlier? Did the Jets make a mistake by bringing Zach Wilson back too early? There is a lot of questions, and this is the biggest thing I will look at is Woody Johnson is not patient. Woody Johnson also sees the Giants' success, and you cannot tell me that he is sitting here right now where a couple weeks ago it looked like the Jets were going to go to the playoffs and the Giants would fight for their playoff lives. And now a few weeks later, the Jets are out of the playoffs with nothing to play for in the final week of the season, and the Giants clinch in MetLife. They're going to the playoffs. Their playoff drought is over. Meanwhile, the Jets, the longest drought in the NFL, continues. And you hear it. You hear it nationally, the snickers of It's the Jets. And I do think a lot of the perception is starting to change, but unfortunately, the way this season ended, it doesn't inspire confidence in this fan base. Even if this team gets off to a great start next year, you don't have faith that they're going to be able to finish it. And look, the Jets might still get a decent draft pick. The Jets still, I feel, are a team that 2023, I kept saying I really believe was going to be the breakout year. But the question is, what do they do at quarterback and what do they do at the head coach? And I will say this too. If someone is getting fired, especially on the offensive side, if LaFleur is not fired and Saleh takes the stance, it's him or me, there could be some changes in Florham Park. So I would not rule anything out at this point. Now, one of the biggest topics I've seen, and I see you guys in the chat, and I will get to you in a second, is Sean Payton. I think that there are other options if the Jets want to go for a different head coach. But here's the thing. One of the things I think a lot of people in the Jets media and people that cover the Jets are forgetting is that Sean Payton can just simply go to where he wants. He's still under contract with the Saints. And the Saints have reported that they want at least a first-round pick for Sean Payton. Now, if it were me, and again, if the Jets were a higher first-round pick, like in the 20s, I would say, you know what? It's probably worth it to get a better head coach. But if the Jets finish with a top 15 pick, I think it's going to be very tough for this organization to just simply part with a high draft pick when this team still needs some key pieces. Now, if you're telling me Sean Payton, this is the place he wants to go, and if it costs the Jets a first-round pick, you know what? I wouldn't hate the Jets going after Sean Payton, but I think that it's clear Sean Payton, the Jets are his first choice. I truly believe that Sean Payton has his eyes on one of two locations. I think Miami's out because they're not moving on from their new head coach after one season. I think that he is looking at two locations. The first one to me is the Chargers, because to coach Justin Herbert, to be in LA, to get a young team like that, if Staley fails in the postseason, I think that that would be his first choice. The second choice could be Dallas. I think that Dallas would give up a first-round pick for Payton. They have a good roster. The NFC isn't as difficult as the AFC. I think that could be an option. I don't see the Jets being the front runner for Sean Payton. However, I wouldn't completely rule out a head coach. For example, if Jim Harbaugh expresses interest in coming back to the NFL and the Broncos have already reached out to him, if he shows interest in the Jets, I would look into that because Harbaugh is a very good head coach. Now, I know there's going to be some people that say bring back Rex Ryan. I really don't think that that's going to happen. One coach I would keep in mind, not to be the head coach, but I would also reach out to Frank Wright to be this team's offensive coordinator next year. You know, he's one of the best offensive minds. He's helped develop some young quarterbacks. And look, I think Frank Wright got a raw deal as a head coach. He never got to draft his own quarterback. And basically the GM just kept giving them quick fix quarterbacks or quarterbacks past their prime. So if I'm the Jets, I'd go hard after Frank Wright to be the new offensive coordinator. But if the Jets are going to make a change, which again, I think is still a long shot, but it has to be considered. I think all things are on the table right now. I don't think Sean Payton is there, but I wouldn't mind giving up a first-round pick necessarily to get a great head coach, especially if Payton says he's going to coach for a couple of seasons. The one worry I have with Payton, though, again, there's so many options for these coaches, especially in media now, is if he doesn't love it for 2 or 3 years, if he could be out, because there will be other options for Payton outside of football. I would really look at Harbaugh if there's a chance he comes out. Experienced head coach. I wouldn't touch. I like Brian Flores, but I don't think the Jets are going to go with another defensive coach. I think they're going to try to look for someone with more of an offensive pedigree. But look, I think all options have to be on the table. We'll get into the quarterbacks. We'll get into the offseason. Again, guys, you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We do a lot on this channel, especially in the offseason. A lot of Jets channels just do during the season. I do a lot in the offseason. I do a lot of previews. I do a lot of primers. I do full 7-round mock drafts. I do a lot of draft content, especially now we will start to get into the swing of that. I know you're not going to want to miss that. I'm also got a couple of ideas on the table. Let me know in the comments in the chat. I'm looking at potential videos like top 5 Jets who will be gone for the 2023 season. I can also look at the best cap cuts for this Jets team. They have a couple players. Again, they're going to be 15th in cap space going the offseason, but there are a couple moves that the Jets can make to move around that money and a couple of guys that I could see not being on this roster next year. So let us get into it. Let us get into the chat. I was waiting for you too, buddy. Good to see you in the channel. Derek Carr 2024, Corey Davis, Fant, Brown, Lawson, Mann, Barrio, Zach Wilson, Flacco for bye. Let me go through this, Jacob, and good to see you again. Derek Carr is my number one choice. I'm going to put this out there now because I know there might be some Lamar Jackson talk. Look, I think Lamar Jackson's a pipe dream. Again, I know that the Ravens are still working on that contract and he might become available this offseason. I think that the Ravens, especially the way it's gone there the last couple games, are going to invest in Lamar. I just don't see Lamar leaving. I think it's a pipe dream. Look, Carr, I would even go one step further for Derek Carr. I know a lot of people want to play the waiting game. And again, Carr is a no trade contract. But if I was the Jets and I had to give up a 2nd-round pick for Carr, I'd do it. And people say that's pretty pricey for someone that could be a free agent. But here's the problem. If you let him go to free agency, while the Jets could be an attractive choice, he has other options. And the other thing, too, is a 2nd-round pick is a good pick. But if I'm getting a good quarterback for 4 or 5 years, I'm doing it. I'm giving up a draft pick because this team is ready to win now. And Carr, statistically, would be the best Jets quarterback in franchise history. And look, I also think Carr would fit this franchise perfectly for another reason that not a lot of people talk about. He is unbelievable at handling chaos around him. New York is chaotic. New York, there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of noise. Derek Carr has handled more noise than any other quarterback in the NFL, arguably over the last 9 years. He's gone through 6 head coaches in 9 years. He's gone through a relocation. He's gone through crazy ownership. He's gone through basically a head coach who had some disgusting, vulgar language that got basically kicked out of the league in his first season. He had an interim special teams coach and got him to the playoffs last year. And basically, if you look the last 5 years statistically, the Raiders on average have had the 32nd ranked defense. Like, this would be the best defense that he would ever had. But I think Carr's the Jets' number one option. Fant, I think, is gone. Brown is under contract. He's got a bit of a cap hit next year. I think Brown will be back unless he retires. Man, I don't mind cutting. Flacco, I think, is going to retire. Barrios is under contract and a good return man. Wilson, we'll see. There's reports that the Jets might be keeping him next year, but I mean, if they are, it's just going to be the backup. Davis, I could see coming back to the Jets because of a couple reasons. And look, I don't think it will be back on the same contract. The Jets can cut him, save $12 million and only incur a $300,000 cap hit. But I could see them doing the Jamison Crowder treatment to him, which is they won't cut him until later in the offseason, and they'll try to rework a contract. And I do think that there won't be a big market for Corey Davis. So if the Jets say, look, we're comfortable bringing you back, not for $12 million, but maybe 9.5 or 10, so we can save a little bit of money, but you still have a team, I could see them doing that because they've already done that before under this. Let's see. This regime is a joke. SOJ collapsed down the stretch. Yeah, it was brutal. It was brutal. 4th and 2, Sal gives up punting. Kev, yeah, I didn't agree with that call either. And look, the offensive play calling has been bad. And look, the problem is you have to have an identity. And on offense, the Jets have no identity. And look, when Robert Saleh came in for that first press conference and was like, look, we're going to be all gas and no break. There's been too much break with him. Like, I want to see this team be aggressive. Like, you don't want to be aggressive stupidly, but in that situation, you got to go for it. I Last 2 games use the same playbook. Defense fell for motion and shifts, no adjustment. That's Sal's fault. Look, the defense hasn't been as good the last couple weeks, but again, the Jets offense has scored 4 touchdowns in the last 5 games. You're not going to win. Like, the Jets defense has held teams to 20 points. I mean, if your offense can't score more than 20 points, let's be honest, you don't deserve to win an NFL game in 2022. So the defense hasn't been great, but it's still been the reason they've been competitive and been in games. Sal would normally be on the hot seat after a couple of seasons, but with Sean Payne looking for a new job, I would say it has to be more of Woody Johnson believe they can get Payne by. Look, if you can get Sean Payne, I would go for it because you're not Hall of Fame coaches don't come around that often. I'd also consider Harbaugh too. The problem is Micro Fox. I think it's a great idea, but the ball's in Payne's court. Payne's going to choose where he wants to go, and I'm not sure if it's the Jets. No matter how we try to change the coaches, I will never have confidence in this team for 2023 or 2024. We'll be saying that same thing 2 years from now. Look, I don't think – I know it's tough because you need evidence that things are going to change. And look, I've seen a lot of positives. Again, I do think that the Jets drafted very well, but you see like it's hot and cold in the free agencies. For every nice sign that the Jets have, like a Quan Alexander or something that's a good signing, they have some – Laken Tomlinson has not looked great this year. Now, how much has it been because Dwayne Brown, the left tackle position, hasn't been good? That I think is a big part of it. But, basically the Jets, the offensive line is going to be the biggest priority outside of quarterback because going into next season, you feel good about 2 positions, like not even feel good, but you know the Jets have 2 starters, and that's AVT at right guard and Laken Tomlinson at left guard. McGovern hasn't played well down the stretch. I still would try to bring him back just because he's at least decent. And I think what the Jets' general plan will be next year is draft the best tackle in the draft with the first-round pick if they don't trade it for Sean Payton. And basically, I think this is how I see the Jets tackle position next year. Hope Mekhi Becton starts at right tackle, but you have Max Mitchell. If Max Mitchell health clears during the spring, you have Max Mitchell who looks like he can at least be a starting caliber right tackle to back him up. So you have a high-end backup. If Dwayne Brown decides to play another year, you keep him at left tackle and you bring the new kid in. And if the new kid's ready to go week 1, great. If Dwayne Brown needs to start 2 or 3 games until he's ready, then you do that. Like, that's how I think they're going to attack that. Jacob Klein. Joe Benigno's lost his mind when he thinks Rex should. Yeah, look, I know Joe Benigno's very entertaining, and I do respect the coverage he's given the Jets over the years. But to me, a lot of his points just seem clickbaity. It just doesn't make sense rational. Like, again, like him basically, he also was saying that the Jets should give Mike White $25 million for on a 1-year deal. Look, I've been saying this all along. Mike White is a nice quarterback. Mike White is what he is. I think Mike White's a high-end backup. I think if you need him to start 2 or 3 games, your offense can function. But you've seen the warts in his game in the Minnesota, struggles in the red zone, now overly athletic to avoid a pass rush when the offensive line isn't playing well. Look, I think he's a gamer. I think the guys like him. I think he's a good locker room guy. I would bring him back to be this team's backup next year potentially. Again, it depends on what happens with Zach Wilson, which direction they go with the quarterback position. But look, to me, Mike White is what he is. I think he's a high-end backup. Great for a 3 or 4 game stint, but you don't want to go much longer with him. Let's see. Jacob Klein, I can't put that Chan there, but yeah, I do think with Harbaugh, could be an option. Look, Sal, it will be interesting. I'm just saying, like, I do think if you had to ask me, I think Salah gets 1 more year. I think basically Douglas and Salah are on a playoff mandate next year. But I also can't rule it out because we've seen every year there's at least one coach that we're surprised gets fired. And look, Woody Johnson can use the excuse he didn't hire Robert Saleh. Woody Johnson could also be going off the Giants method, which is cycle a coach every 2 years until you hopefully get the right one. And look, this is an offseason too where if Harbaugh becomes available and Peyton's on the market, I mean, this might be the best coaching market we've seen in years in terms of getting a head coach in the NFL. And if you feel like you are a legitimate head coach, because look, to me, there's big questions on this team. The biggest one's obviously quarterback. I don't think you can question that. And while there's a lot of things I like about Sa, I think the defense has gotten better. The question becomes then, can you trust Robert Saleh to be this head coach long term? And more importantly, the Jets, even if they get Derek Carr, they're eventually going to need to develop a young quarterback. And do you feel confident that this staff can do it? Now, it goes back to Zach Wilson. How much of this is on Zach and how much is this on the coaching staff? I think most of it's on Zach, but look, the coaching staff, you got to wonder, how much did they play into his development? Did they hurt his development? Did they stun his development? Even though he was the number 2 pick, if they felt he wasn't ready year 1, then he shouldn't have been out there week 1. If they really felt that at points this year, he was that lost that he need to be inactive, I said when they first made him inactive and they benched him, he shouldn't play another game this year, because there was no real high end to that. The only way it would have worked is if Wilson came back and lit the world on fire and basically was stunning people and looking unbelievable. But you knew that wasn't going to happen. And unfortunately, you wondered, did they permanently ruin Zach Wilson with the way they handled it? Look, when they benched him, they should have kept him on the bench. He shouldn't have played another game this year. And the fact that you put him out in front of the home crowd twice to basically get bullied, to look horrible, and to look completely lost, I mean, you have to put down the coaching staff too. Frank as OC is something I can be on board with. Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers, I think, is not. I don't think Rodgers is leaving Green Bay. I really don't think that. Jimmy G going to New England with Bill Bryan as the OC. I don't think that they're going to go to Jimmy G yet. Don't forget, too, I still think that coaching staff likes Mac Jones. I mean, I don't think they're ready to move off him. Basically, Mac Jones is a younger, healthier version of Jimmy G, although I think Jimmy G is a better quarterback. Look, if Jimmy G doesn't go to the Jets, the Patriots could make sense, but then they're undermining the quarterback they drafted in the first round too. So we'll have to see. Benigno and Tierney said they should go all in on Payne like they did with Parcells. Look, I wouldn't mind it. The thing you have to do, Kev, is it mutual? Because this is the only problem with Peyton. The Jets could give up a first-round pick and get Sean Payne. That's great. But if it doesn't go well after a year or two, Payne has options where you saw it in New Orleans. Situation's not great. Oh, look, Amazon or YouTube or Netflix is having a new NFL panel or needs an NFL host or needs a coach on the panel, and they're going to offer me stupid money. I mean, you look, Tom Brady's going to get $300 million to work for Fox, and he hasn't even retired yet. So you do wonder if that's the only concern. But if Payton says, like, look, I'm committed to this long-term, I have a long-term plan, he likes Derek Carr. That's the other thing, too. Does he want to be with Derek Carr? I really think if you had to ask me today, Sean Payton's list of teams, the Jets would probably be third. Dallas, again, has a lot of resources. Dallas has the big name credit. Dallas is in the NFC, which is not great right now. Another thing, too, which I don't think people are talking about, what almost brought Sean Payton back to coaching? It was Tom Brady and going to Miami. That, I think, is off the table. What might not be off the table is going back to New Orleans and bringing Tom Brady to New Orleans. I almost feel like that's a more realistic option than Sean Payton coming to the Jets. Look, if the Jets are going to get a big-name head coach, if I had to put money on it today, I think Jim Harbaugh is more likely than Sean Payton. Because Payton requires draft capital, and I think Payton's got other suitors, and I think Payton's got other places he would rather be. Look, I think his number one choice is with Justin Herbert. I think number 2 could be Dallas. Heck, 3, like I said, New Orleans has a great defense. They have no quarterback. But if you get Tom Brady to New Orleans with that defense and that terrible NFC South, I mean, Sean Payton might look and go, if I have Tom Brady with that defense in New Orleans, I could easily win 12 games and probably have the number 1 seed going through the Big Easy. I mean, that to me could be an option. Um, let's see. A lot of people getting here. Let me get to some of the more recent chats because I've fallen behind a little bit. So let me get to some of the more recent chats. Let's see. Been saying McGovern was trash. I don't think he's trash. Bill Bryan for the OC. Look, if I'm honest, I wouldn't hate Bill Bryan for an OC. Look, I think, and look, Bill Bryan, I get it. He flamed out horribly in Houston. But we also have to remember when he was just the head coach in Houston and not the GM, he was a pretty good head coach. And I do think he's a good offensive mind. I mean, I wouldn't, as the offensive mind, I would go Frank Wright first. Bill Bryan could be a good choice too. I wouldn't hate that. What has Salas shown us he deserves another year? I mean, Jets take this isn't a question that for me personally, I think he's shown he can develop some of the younger players. You saw the defense get a lot better. This defense is really good under him. I think that there's been some encouraging signs. And look, this team dealt with a myriad of injuries this year. And unfortunately, this is a team, too, that got killed in the offensive line. And whenever your in offensive line is highly impacted, it can crater your season. That's what happened to the Jets. Like, they went through not just tackles, they went through the backup tackles and the practice squad tackles. Yeah, that's not happening. He's not coming back to coach. He's not. I don't think that's. Cowher's been rumored since he retired in what is it, 2005, 2006. He's not coming back. Let's see. Kev, I knew Sal and coaches were going to be a mess by not having a good vet on the staff. They just threw Zach Wilson in the fire from the jump and expected me success. But the problem is, Kev, that's the NFL now. Look, you have to find out this is the new NFL. The new NFL is you get your quarterback in the first round, and you, as an organization, have a decision on him by Thanksgiving year 2. Now, do I agree that they should have gotten a better veteran? Sure. But if you look back, this was not a great free agent market for backup quarterbacks. Now, if you look back, Nick Foles, but we've seen him in Indianapolis. He looks not even lost, just unbearable. Kev, what veteran backup were they bringing in this offseason? They weren't bringing in Jimmy G. Jimmy G wasn't leaving San Francisco after bringing them to the NFC Championship game. Like, what veteran quarterback? The only one I could maybe think of is Teddy Bridgewater. And Bridgewater, in 2 starts, has gotten hurt with Miami. Like, he couldn't even make it through starts in Miami. He started 2 games. He couldn't finish either start. Like, what backup quarterback? And this is the thing. My theme on this channel this entire year, and if you're joining us now and you're new to the channel, this has been a constant theme for me on this channel all season long, and it's been the following. This season, the wins and losses are always important, but the biggest thing was getting an answer on Zach Wilson. And look, I think the answer has been clear. The Jets don't have a quarterback. The worst thing it would be if you didn't get an answer on Zach. And we're at this point where like, I don't know, maybe if this breaks right, if that breaks right. Again, I do think that the Jets, talent-wise, put enough pieces around Zach. If you want to question the coaching staff and their development, you can. But I do think that enough pieces were there for Zach to succeed this year, and he did not. Dable showing us coaching is more of a factor than any sport. Meanwhile, Sal can get the team up for a game with 10 minutes off. And look, Kev, that I think is also another reason why I think he's got to be a little bit on a hot seat right now, because it's not just Seattle. I mean, the Jets came in after Buffalo. Like, I didn't think they were going to beat Buffalo. So they were 7-4. You had 2 games in your building against the Lions and the Jaguars. And look, I get it. The Lions and Jaguars are 2 of the hottest teams in the NFL. I get it. But your defense gave you an opportunity to win, and your offense could do nothing against, like, not just middle-of-the-road defenses, bad defenses in the NFL. And they couldn't get anything done. And it didn't look like they were ready to play. And then you go on Thursday night in front of the national audience and you didn't look ready to play. And then you get 10 days, your season's online. And this is the thing, like, you were gifted life. Like, after the Jaguar game, the Jets had a 5% chance to make the postseason. The end of Sunday night, the Jets all of a sudden, they win out. They have a great chance to be in the postseason. They got a new lease on life. And that was the effort they put out there. And you saw it from Conklin saying, like, I don't know why we're flat. That, to me, is pretty damning. And if you're Woody Johnson's also, he's not the wait and let it see. He is the action guy. And you don't think he is stewing that the Jets had multiple opportunities. Like, think about what has happened to the Jets. They were in an opportunity to play meaningful football in December. And you look around the AFC right now. If the Jets took care of business in one of these games, they'd be playing to get in Week 18. Hell, if they took care of business twice, if they could beat New England once this year, if they could beat New England once this year and won one of these games and come into this last stretch with 9 wins, there's a chance that the Jets could have even clinched at this point a playoff spot. Because Miami has fallen apart. New England's not very good. The Jaguars were pretty much out of it. Like, even Tennessee, like, they're basically playing for the division to see who gets in, and they're going to get in with 8 wins, or 8 or 9 wins. So I just look at this team and the wasted opportunities, and, you know, going into next season, basically, like, it doesn't even matter. Like, even if the Jets win, like, this is a great poll question. Like, do the Jets want to win? Do Jet fans want to win in Miami? I think part of you does, so you can beat Miami. You can sweep them this year, potentially knock them out of the playoffs this year. But at the same time, you're probably also looking at, too, if the Jets lose, there's a chance they could get a top 10 pick potentially. So I'm curious to what you guys think. Like, put it in the chat. But this is just what the frustrating thing is. And this is why I keep saying, don't be surprised if Woody does something. Like, someone's getting fired. I think it's going to be LaFleur. But again, if Saleh is that passionate about his staff that he's like, look, I have to have a LaFleur on the staff, I mean, don't be surprised. Because also, here's the other thing why, if the Jets moved off from Saleh, I don't think it would be the worst thing in the world for 2 reasons. Number one, Woody has the excuse that he didn't hire Saleh. But the second reason is, and this I think is very important, this could be the most attractive the Jets have looked in a long time as a job because of the young core, because of the good young defense, because of the great draft they had last year, because of some of these young playmakers. Like, when Saleh took this job, you could have made the case the Jets were one of the worst jobs to take. You look right now of all the potential coaching openings, and it depends. If a coach really likes Derek Carr, they have a veteran quarterback they really like, the Jets all of a sudden could be an interesting job and a more attractive job. And this is another reason I think Carr has to be the number one option, because if the Jets get Derek Carr, I think that it's clear the Jets have the number 2 quarterback in their division. He's not Josh Allen, but I think Derek Carr is a lot better than Tua, and I think he's a lot better than Mac Jones. And with this defense, like Dan Orlovsky said on ESPN today, the Jets would be a playoff team with Carr. And I think next year they would be a playoff team with Carr, with that defense, and with these playmakers. So I just have this feeling that, too, like, the other reason why you don't completely rule it out is the Jets are somewhat attractive now. Whenever they've been the previous times, not so much. Sorry, Kev, I got to get back to you. Veteran QB. Oh, okay, yeah. Zach Wilson is rookie year. Yeah, I'm trying to go back to that offseason, too, because I think they tried to bring in Fitzpatrick, but Fitzpatrick didn't want to come here. They eventually went to Flacco. But look, you knew the thing too with that season, I would have brought in a veteran quarterback, but you knew Zach was going to play. Let's see. I'm trying, Melvin. I'm trying. Like I said, this is cheaper than therapy, so hopefully this helps. We have to go in on QB and run stopping linebacker. I don't think if I had to prioritize the defensive positions, I would put safety as a bigger need than linebacker right now. But again, I'm all in for the quarterback. I cannot trust Sal to get a win after a bye week. No way Sal can outsmart any coach in the division. That's the other thing, too. You just feel like this coaching staff, there are times where, look, they didn't make adjustments, and the defense has been exposed a little bit in the last couple of weeks, and they don't make adjustments. And this offense, like LaFleur last year, when they were down and this team needed sparks, like he came up with some really creative plays and play designs. And this year, we haven't seen any of that. Like when your offense is struggling, you gotta find ways to manufacture touches. And the other thing too that drives me nuts is Elijah Moore. Like Elijah Moore, you've seen when he gets the ball in his hands, he can do some good things. But Braxton Berrios, good role player. But should he be getting all these jet sweeps? Should he be getting all these targets in key spots? No. And at this point in the season, like especially for this last game, I want to see certain players play more. Bryce Huff deserves more snaps. Jermaine Johnson deserves more snaps. Look, I think Lawson is going to be gone at the end of this year, and Jermaine Johnson is going to be the starting defensive end next year. I'd go this far. I would make Jermaine Johnson play the majority of snaps against the Dolphins. I would mix it up and get some of these younger kids more of an opportunity to play. I mean, if I'm the Jets, I'd put Sherwood in at middle linebacker over CJ Mosley. See what I have. Is there that big of a drop-off? If there isn't, well, that saves me a whole bunch of money. Ashton Davis, I can't believe I'm saying this, but look, the way that the safety position has been exposed, especially Joyner, like why the hell hasn't Ashton Davis been playing? I mean, Ashton Davis actually got an interception this year in a critical game. Like, can we see if he's got anything? I mean, he was still a draft pick. Like, can he play? Like, I would start him in the last game. See what he can do. I know one game's not going to make the biggest difference, but get these younger guys some more playing time. I'm sick and tired of seeing some of these guys like Nathan Shepard. I'm sorry. I don't need to see Nathan Shepard. I know what he is. Look, I don't think they've lost their mental edge. And look, they've both been highly productive. And look, I think that they're going to help reset the score. And I think that they're going to be a huge nucleus for this team going forward. I guess, Melvin, but again, it's the way they finished. They were 7-4 and they had winnable games. Like if the Jets won 9 games this year, they probably would have a 90% chance of being in the postseason. And when you start the season 7-4, and we were saying like, look, they just have to win 2 games, and they haven't won any, and they might not win anymore. I mean, they might not win in Miami. Big picture, start Zach Wilson to guarantee a win. Get better. Look, that's the other thing too. At this point, Mike White, you can tell is not healthy. Don't start Joe Flacco. If you're going to start anyone, start Wilson or Strevler. Look, see what you got. Wilson, there's no pressure in this game. He's on the road. The Jets are out of it. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? Wilson looks worse. I mean, It's the quote like a Christmas vacation. Worse? How can it get worse? We're at the threshold of hell. Like, that's where we are with the quarterback position. I'm very excited about AVT and Brees. Like, that's the other thing. I keep saying this. Like, the Jets, I think, are going to be better. They're going to have big players back. AVT, Brees. This great rookie class is going to have another season. Yeah, and I agree with Micro Fox. Give Clemens more playing time. Like, don't take Clemens off the field. Don't take Jermaine Johnson off the field. Let them play. Let Hamza play. Like if you want linebacker position, play Ashton Davis. Or if you don't believe in Davis, play Adams at the safety position. Offensive line. Again, I think you got to start with who you have. But look, here's the other thing. I wouldn't play Corey Davis. I'd start Denzel Mims. Mims hasn't been great, but at least Mims, isn't going to give you a brutal drop every game. Like, look, Mims, see what you got in Mims. Play him. Like, don't play Corey Davis. Like, especially CJ Mosley. I want to play CJ Mosley. Like, I'm pretty sure there's no injury clause in the Mosley contract, but what's he going to do in the last game of the season that's really going to put him over? Yeah, Tony Adams. I would play Tony Adams. Yeah, like Ruckert's a great play. Jeremy Ruckert. Like again, Bryce Hall maybe. The problem is they already have so many good corners because they're not going to sit Sauce. They're not going to sit DJ Reed. I wouldn't hate seeing Bryce Hall there. But look, I think Jeremy Ruckert needs to play. And look, I like the Ruckert pick. I think Ruckert's got a lot of potential. But it's one of those things now when you look back on it, it was, I still think it's a good pick. And if he is a good player next year, we won't think about it. But for this year, Ruckert's been inactive all the games. And I would play him. Like, again, I know Conklin's been nice. Uzama's been consistent. But look, give Ruckert a shot. Like, just get these young guys some playing. It's a meaningless game. Yeah, LaFleur. And that's the thing what drives me nuts about LaFleur is he gets too pass happy. And as an offensive coordinator, you have to understand that this strength of this team is when they run the football, when they do jet sweeps. And San Francisco is the great blueprint. They run the ball down teams' throats. They ask Purdy not to do too much. When you're asking Zach or Mike White to throw the ball 45, 50 times a game, it's not a winning formula. I get you got fun toys in the toy chest. I know you love Elijah Moore. I know you love Garrett Wilson. I know you got some nice toys, but this offensive line is not great. And the biggest thing with the run game is you got to stick with it even when it's not working because you wear teams down with it. And they abandon the run early. And even when you're down, stay with the running game. Open up play action. I mean, there was a great stat that the Jets run more empty sets, than any other team in the NFL. They're one of the top 3 teams in the empty set, which is basically no running back in the backfield, 5 offensive linemen, quarterback in the shotgun. You have a bad offensive line. You don't have a super mobile quarterback. Like, you don't even have a back to chip or a tight end to chip. Like, as an offensive coordinator, you have to have the wherewithal. And look, this was year 1. I could cut a little slack because you're learning on the job. It's a new position. But by year 2, I need to see growth. I've seen growth from Jeff Ulbrich. I've seen growth from this defense. If anything, this offense has regressed with better pieces. When Breece Hall isn't on this field, this team can't do anything. Yeah, I don't see how he's going to raise the trade value too much. Eccles, though, was injured. We'll have to see if he's healthy. I mean, I would even try Eccles at safety. I mean, just to see what they got. Yeah, that's a frustrating thing. They don't adjust, and they need to adjust more. And I get it. This is an infuriating team. And it's funny because they adjust and they play well in the fourth quarter, but they can't adjust within the game. So, yeah, I love Jamal Adams basically tweeting today, like, oh, my like my mentions have been pretty quiet today. Well, most people forgot you played Jamal because you haven't played all freaking season. And Jet fans are happy with the trade. They're not bitter about it. They got Garrett Wilson, who could win Offensive Rookie of the Year, and an All-Pro offensive lineman for a box safety who's hurt and being paid $17 million a year. So, yeah. Yeah, like Jamal, of course. I love Jamal Adams. He's the most front-running player in the NFL. Don't be mad at me because y'all got that ass whooped again, like from Jamal Adams. Yeah, Jamal, like we really miss you that much. Yeah, he's like the biggest troll. And like again, Jamal, like here's a fun thing, Jamal. You know what's kind of funny? That team's actually doing a lot better when you haven't been on the field this year. Like, am I the only one that's noticed that? Like, they paid you all this money to be a difference maker, but yet they have a good shot to make the playoffs without you. So, I mean, yeah, Jamal, let's see if you can play 17 games for me next year. How about that? I'll be pissed now there's nothing to play for and the Jets play well because there's no pressure. This would be indicative of how overcomplicated LaFleur's calls. Look, I do agree with you to an extent that he does overcomplicate things. Yep, complete clown. I think the Jets made a great move there. Did you notice Corey Davis called all the passes after the game was over? Cut him out. They're gonna come in the offseason. Look, I think what's gonna happen, Kev, is they're gonna give him the Jamison Crowder ultimatum, which is to take a pay cut or they'll cut him. And I think what the holdover his head is like, look, we'll give you like 9 million, but you're probably not gonna have much of a market out there. So, because again, I do think that this coaching staff likes him. It's clear that he's the third option. Look, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to lose Corey Davis in the offseason. I think the Jets took a risk on him, and people always kill the Jets. The Jets paid him $12 million a year. They're not paying him to be a number one. But you look at his tenure with the Jets, I mean, 9 games last year. If he plays next week, it's only going to be 13 games this year. I mean, 34 catches last year, 31 catches this year, 500 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, yeah, it's been disappointing. I could see the Jets trying to rework. I think with Lawson and with Corey Davis, it will be interesting because I think both are going to be in the same boat where the Jets are going to try to keep them on a more team friendly deal and on a smaller cap hit next year. And if they don't agree to it, they will be cut. I think the Jets will say, look, there's not going to be much of a market for you. We're going to give you probably more than you're going to make on the market. And look, Lawson's been disappointing. I know Corey Davis has been disappointing. Look, the Jets have been doing better in the draft. The free agency has left a lot to be desired. CF. Who's CF? Did you mean Corey Davis? I'm trying to think CF. Yeah, if you could just like Melvin just elaborate. Corey Davis. Okay. I was like CF. I was like trying to think am I missing one in there? Best offensive lineman. I really like the Paris Johnson kid out of Ohio State. I think that there's 3 really good tackles. The one benefit to the Jets this year, too, is this is going to be a high-end quarterback draft. I think the quarterbacks are going to be a little bit overrated this year, but again, I still think you're going to see 3 go in the top 10, which is good for the Jets because it pushes someone down the board. I mean, there's a chance you could get the best tackle, at the very least the second. I think you get the best tackle. Your plan is you put the best tackle at the left tackle. If Dwayne Brown comes back, I'd still try to add a free agent if Brown leaves, but Brown wants to come back. He's your left tackle. He's healthy to start the season. He's a high-end backup, or at the very least can start a game or two until the left tackle's ready. You bring Mekhi back, but you also have a good insurance plan with Max Mitchell. If you feel Max Mitchell and his health is cleared up, great. But look, if I'm the Jets, like in my first 3 rounds, I'm not going to lie, I'd take 2 offensive linemen with at least 3 of those picks. Like I try to get the best offensive tackle in round 1, and I try to get the best interior offensive lineman in round 2, because usually some of those interior ones will drop because there's so few good tackles. People will reach for tackles in the first round, and then you'll see like a good guard. Like, for example, Linderbaum to me was one of the best prospects in the draft last year, but since he was an interior offensive lineman, he dropped all the way to 25. I will also rule it out, like, because again, if Douglas comes back, there's going to be pressure on him to get stuff done, and Douglas is showing he can be aggressive. I also wouldn't rule this out. Could the Jets go 2 offensive linemen in round 1? Jets, don't forget, are going to have a second-round pick that's probably right now, if the draft was today, I believe it is 46, 45 range. Actually, no, 32. Yeah, about 45 to 47 range. I could see the Jets may try to get back into round 1, like packaging a second and a fourth to jump up and grab another offensive lineman for tackle falls, a guard falls, a center falls. Look, I think the Jets are going to try to find a center in the draft. It might be a little bit more difficult. There isn't like a Linderbaum in this year's class. Heck, I draft 2 tackles. Even if a tackle doesn't play this year, that's almost a good thing for the Jets because they went through so many last year. Obviously, quarterback's a big need. Don't even bother. The Jets are not drafting quarterback. They have to win now next year. They're not drafting a quarterback in the draft. Like, if they do, Maybe they find a kid that falls to round 3. Maybe in round 2, if some first round pick is sitting there, like in the Geno Smith year, which again, I hate to bring up because of this weekend, but if that situation happens, maybe. But I really feel the Jets are going to go invest in a quarterback. If I had to go top needs for the Jets, excluding quarterback, I think offensive line's number one. I draft 2 offensive linemen. Defense, there's a lot of good linebackers this year. I would maybe even go linebacker in round 2. I love I think it's either Toto or Tutu from Alabama. He could probably be there in round 2 just to get a more athletic sideline to sideline linebacker. I think safety will be one. Look, Whitehead has been frustrating, but I think he's still at least a starting safety, so you only need to get one. The hard part to the projected draft is also the free agency class, because if the Jets feel like the linebacker need in free agency, like I think the Jets are going to approach free agency like they did the last couple of years, not go overblown, but try to fill a bunch of holes. So in the draft, they can be more creative, they can be aggressive and try to get the best player available, so that they don't have to necessarily draft a safety or have to draft the linebacker. Like even in the free agency class, I'm trying to think who the offensive lineman could be in the 2023 offensive line class. Again, this all can change because in the NFL you have the franchise tag, you have all the different tags that you could have. Just trying to see, like, just looking quickly. I know Orlando Brown Jr. was projected free. I don't think he's going anywhere. Yeah, I'm just trying to gauge like who could be a potential tackle out there. Yeah, it's a tough one because you just look at the free agency and there's not a lot. So the biggest offensive tackles: Wynn, Fant, not great names. Irving, Reef, Jawan Taylor, Kelvin Beachum. I will say, a player to keep an eye on is Andre Dillard, young offensive lineman, didn't really get an opportunity with the Eagles. I think the Jets could be after him because, again, kind of like Nate Herbig, young guy you can bring in as a backup, you hope can eventually be a starter. One guy I wouldn't hate either, especially if and again, it depends if he wants to keep playing. If Brown retires, I'd seriously consider Kelvin Beachum. I think he's a solid tackle. I think at the very least, he's a high-end backup left tackle. Again, depends if he's going to be a starter, if he's okay with the backup role. I don't think the Jets are going to look at guards. I mean, center, there's not a ton on the market. I mean, Bradbury is a good center. Kelsey's a good center, but they're also older. I don't think Eric McCoy is going to get out of New Orleans. I'd love Eric McCoy, but again, a lot of it comes down to, like, if they're a good offensive lineman, teams don't let them go. They don't let them escape to free agency. Yeah, I think you drafted Jermaine Johnson the first round. He slips into Lawson's role. I mean, John Franklin Myers could also be cut too. The Jets have an out with his contract as well. Again, it's not as much as Lawson's savings. And I do think Franklin Myers offers more versatility for this team in terms of his ability to play inside, outside. Is 2024 first round and 2023 second round enough pick? Like, that's the thing. If the problem with the Saints is I think they want the first round pick this year because they traded. I have to remember because they made that trade with the Eagles last year. So the Eagles have a first round pick for them. Let me check Tankathon really quick. I'm pretty sure the Saints don't have a first round pick. And I think that's part of the reason why they want a first round pick is so they have one this season. I would do a 2024 pick because especially with Peyton, you're hoping to be good. But that's the other thing. I don't think the Saints would do that because you understand what the value is this year and where they're picking a draft. Yeah, New Orleans doesn't have a first round pick because of the Eagles. So I think for 2 reasons that's not going to work. Number one, Saints don't have a first round pick this year. They want a first round pick this year. And number two, if you're the Saints and you give Sean Payton to another team, you would expect that team to be pretty good. So would you rather have, like, for example, the Jets? If the Jets have, let's say, the 12th pick this year, it's more valuable to get the 12th pick this year than trade Payton to the Jets. They make the playoffs even as a wild card team. That becomes a pick in the late 20s. There's a huge difference between picking 12 and picking 25. Um, let's see. Yeah, I'm working on that, Steven. I appreciate that. I do have, I do have Nick Mangold. He's protecting my office much better than the Jets' offensive line has been this year. So, great name. So many bloated contracts need to be looked at. Look, the Jets have contracts they can get out of. ABT should play tackle next year. King Code, I get this notion. I've talked to the Jay Doozable about this a lot, and I agree with him where AVT could be a really good tackle, but he is so talented. I mean, he could legitimately be an all-pro guard. And you have to ask yourself, is it better to get an all-pro guard or have a really good tackle? And I think AVT has at least shown the versatility. Like in a pinch, he can play tackle. But I would try to keep him in the same position. I wouldn't ping pong him. I think it hurts his development. I'd keep him at right guard. I'd keep Tomlinson at left guard. I mean, if you have to next year, you can go there. Melvin all picks should be offensive lineman. I love offensive linemen. I don't hate that idea either. Do you think the Jets take a shot at Anthony Richardson? You really love Anthony Richardson. I don't. Look, the only way they will take a shot at Anthony Richardson, and just, do you know if he's declared for the draft? Because that's the other thing too. I've been seeing some declarations today for the draft. Has he officially declared for the draft? Like, I just want to make sure because if he has, then that's fine. Again, this coaching staff needs to win next year. If this is the same coaching staff, guess what? They need to make the playoffs next year. It's a lot harder to do with the rookie quarterback. So I think if Richardson falls to like top of round 2, yeah, I think the Jets would consider it, but especially if it's good value. But I don't think in first one. I mean, Juju or Hardman as a Davis replacement. Yeah, I'd rather have Juju. I think Juju is a really good player. I'd consider trade down having less draft picks. The thing is the Jets have a good amount of picks next year. Like, they obviously don't have the treasure trove that they did coming into this draft, but they still have a good amount of picks. I'm just checking to see because, again, just seeing how many Jets have: a first, second, third, fourth. So the good news too is because James Robinson, who hasn't been playing, they're not going to play him. So the Jets, that trade becomes better because the 5th round, that was a tentative pick. So the Jets keep their 5th rounder. So they'll lose a 6 for Robinson. So the Jets will have 1 through 5 standard. Let's see. Yeah, they have a couple 6. Again, like the 6th round, a lot of it's compensation. The other thing too is I'm trying to remember also with the Jets if they get any compensation picks for free agency. I don't think they didn't get any last year. Again, like the compensation picks like just are so freaking complicated right now. I'm just checking the projections for the compensation picks. Teams are projected to receive picks: Cowboys, Cardinals. Yeah, so I don't think the Jets are going to get those picks. But again, the Jets have picks. So I don't hate the idea of drafting a quarterback. I don't think they're going to do it in round 1. We need 2 safeties, 2 linebackers, OTD tackle help. I don't trade up. I wouldn't trade up either. I was saying like in the 2nd round, trade back into the 1st round. I think that they're going to look at one safety, probably two offensive linemen. I think probably one linebacker. So I think those are some of the ways they'll look at it. There's more questions off season than last. Who's the QB, OC, O line? I think that there's less. I mean, you have a good nucleus going into next year. Like the Jets last year, we were wondering if they had talented players. We know they have talented players now. So I think that at least now you have some clarity on what position to focus on. Don't forget, too, I don't hate moving Eccles or Hall to safety. I actually think Hall's not going to be on this team. I think Hall is going to the last year of the contract. The Jets don't have a lot of players that you would really trade or get assets for. I could see the Jets trying to move Hall maybe this offseason to a team that needs a cornerback, maybe trying to get like a fourth for him or basically a fifth round pick. I mean, I could see them moving him. Yeah, Quincy. The thing with Quincy, though, too, is if keeping Quincy on this team also helps us keep Quinnen Williams, I'm putting up with that. Yeah, the vets on this team, that's the frustrating thing. It's Corey Davis. It's guys like those. I used to play in high school. I'll play. I think the Jets could use me, I guess. I think I was asking when DeBerkashaw Ferguson, they did the ceremony at MetLife. I'm like, can he come out and play at halftime? I would tell LaFleur kick rocks, hire Reich for whatever he wants, and Sal knows. So yeah, like that's the other thing with Reich is if things go sideways, Reich can be a head coach, and I think Reich was a good head coach. I mean, he had a winning record in Indy and basically had no quarterback, which is almost perfect for the Jets to win without a quarterback. Hire Reich ASAP. Yeah, I would hire Reich too. He would be my number one choice. Bradbury. Are we talking about James? Yeah, Bradbury's. Yeah, sorry, I got the age confused on him. I was thinking about someone else. I love linebacker Trenton Simpson. I would consider him with first round pick in a trade down, maybe. Look, the Jets need offensive line. That's also one of the things, too, I remember last year. I remember the Sauce Gardner pick has been great. But even at the time, I always remember when they made that pick, I was also like, I hope the Jets don't regret not having an offensive lineman. And that was the one thing about last year's draft. I was like, yeah, I would have tried to take an offensive lineman earlier. But again, I think Matt Mitchell has proven he can at least hold down right tackle. Hopefully he's healthy next year. I think he will be. But I mean, he was a good find. Look, I think the first round pick is going to be offensive lineman. I think it's going to be who's the best tackle on the board. Because their offensive line's been that bad. Who's the best tackle? Now, if they trade down, maybe or trade back in. Look, let's put it this way. The linebackers are not what's costing this team games this year. The linebackers aren't great. The linebackers sometimes hurt this defense, but the linebackers are not the biggest reason the Jets are not great this year. It's quarterback and also the protection. Their offensive line isn't generating holes, and their offensive line isn't pass protecting. The offensive line does two things. It makes those skill position wide receivers better because they'll have more time to get open. It makes whoever the quarterback is better because they'll have more time to throw. And also, by the way, it will help Breece Hall when he gets back because he'll have more holes to run through. Any pick for Peyton is too risky. You are right. He can coach one season, decide to retire the next program. That's why if I had to pick between the two, I'd go Harbaugh. If Harbaugh is really interested about leaving Michigan, I'd look at Harbaugh. I think Harbaugh's a good head coach. I know there's some questions about him in the postseason, but look, the Jets at this point just need someone to get him to the freaking postseason. Everywhere he goes, he wins. He wins. He's a winning coach. He's a respected coach. And I think Harbaugh would be better. And look, here's the thing. Harbaugh costs you money. Woody Johnson, you want to win? Put your money where your mouth is. Pay Harbaugh. Payton not only costs you money, he's going to want a big contract. He's going to cost you draft picks. Do I think Payton's a better coach than Harbaugh? Yeah. Do I think there's a huge gap between the two? Not really. Why would we give up picks for a coach, Salah's coach? Again, this is hypothetical. I'm convinced. Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that, but it could have played a factor in there. Oh yeah, I think there's a playoff mandate for Douglas. And look, I've been saying this. If they made the playoffs this year, they pretty much bought themselves an extension. They were going to have a grace period. But now the thing is that not only that they missed the playoffs, but how they missed the playoffs. It's going to stick in Jets fans' craw. Jet fans are going to be pissed about all offseason. You're going to have to hear about all offseason, all next season during the Jets have the longest playoff drought. The Jets haven't been in the playoffs in over a decade. Like, you're going to hear about it. And I do think that there's going to be a playoff mandate because this was a team too. And that's the other thing. This was a team that should be in the playoffs if they were competent in the quarterback position, if they were competent offensively, not even good offensively, just competent, they'd be in the playoffs. And I love Joe Douglas. I think Joe Douglas has done a really good job, especially in the draft. There's things I like about Saleh. At the last 3 drafts, JD succeeded last year. I don't know if I can trust JD to have lower picks. Yeah, I saw that article too today about the 2021 draft class for the Jets. Look, I think the Elijah Moore pick was good. I don't think they utilized him enough this year. And obviously the Zach Wilson pick's bad. But then I also go back to two people like killing the Jets for Zach Wilson. Every other quarterback after Zach Wilson hasn't exactly been great. I mean, Lance can't get on the field. Jones is what he is. And even hurt, like Fields. Fields is a great runner, but he gets hurt. Is he going to be a long-term sustainable quarterback? I don't think so. So, again, at the time, everyone also was saying Zach Wilson was guy. All the analysts that kill the Jets are taking Zach Wilson. You know what they were also doing? They were also saying the Jets would be stupid if they didn't take Zach Wilson. So, look, AVT was a great pick. I think Elijah Moore was a good pick in the draft. I'm just going through the draft order right now. So I'm just trying to bring that up right now. So you guys just give me a second. Yeah, I think who put it out there today? Yeah, Connor Hughes did it too. Obviously, it's not as bad as the 2020. Look, the day 3 picks, I don't think you can harp on too much. Look, they got a great guard. Elijah Moore, I think, is a talented receiver. I just don't think they utilized him the correct way this year. Michael Carter is still a solid 4th round pick. I think Michael Carter, the cornerback, is still a solid. I mean, he was one of the top 20 corners, and he's a great slot corner. So they got a starting corner now. Eccles, I think has got some potential and he's played well this year, but has gotten hurt. Pinnock obviously was one that I didn't agree with them letting go. Hamza was a risk. Sherwood was a miss. I mean, look, they're also day 3 picks. Like, people are like, oh, the Jets have to hit a home run on day 3. Day 3, if you can get 2 or 3 decent players or even role players, you've done a decent job. And I think the Jets found enough of those on day 3. So, and the other thing too is like people are like, oh, the Jets could have a better draft. Well, who else were they going to take? People are like, oh, the Jets made a terrible mistake with Elijah Moore. Well, the Giants also drafted a Kadarius Toney in that first round of that draft, and he's not even on the freaking team anymore. So for people saying, oh, the Jets had a god-awful draft, like, was it an A draft? Probably not. It was still a good draft. Yeah, let's see. It was all right. I don't think it's not as good as 2022, but I don't think it's as doom and gloom as everyone else says. Let's see. No, they both played. Sauce had a couple pass breakups. I thought he played great yesterday. Why would Joe Douglas have to lose his job because Saleh sucks? Joe Douglas gives guys the talent. I'm not even saying that. I'm saying I feel if anyone's going to go, I feel like at least Douglas has gotten enough goodwill. But again, Douglas hasn't also made the playoffs in a couple of years. So I do think both are going to be on the line. Fields has given himself time to develop his arm with his legs. We'd be in the playoffs right now with Fields. Maybe. I don't know how he'd work in the system. I mean, again, the Jets quarterback position has been terrible. So, and for everyone saying, oh, the Jets missed on Fields. Well, the 49ers passed on Fields. A lot of teams passed on Fields. It wasn't like Fields went right after him. Like Trey Lance went before Fields. Fields was 7 for 21 with a TD and a pick. I would rather Zach Wilson. Wow, Melvin. Bring the fire right there. I love it. Yeah, LaFleur's terrible. Like, that's the thing. I think if anything, but he's going to I think he's going to be the sacrificial lamb basically this year, just because, like, look, the Jets, someone has to pay for this. But the other thing too is you also want to see this from Sal too. Like, Sal has to understand, like, he needs to fire LaFleur and make a big change. But I am curious, guys. Let me know in the chat. I am fascinated. So this coming from Damon Amendola, Jim Harbaugh reportedly expected to leave Michigan for the NFL if offered a job. So that is very interesting. And look, I think Harbaugh's done a great job at Michigan. If I'm the Jets, I would call. I think you're not doing your due diligence if you're Wade Johnson if you do not at least call Harbaugh and you do not at least call Peyton. If Payne says, like, he really wants to come in, this is his number one choice, then you go for it. Because again, I think both have proven track records as head coaches, and both are winners, and they've won everywhere they've gone. I also call Harbaugh. I'd get the ball rolling on Harbaugh now. Like, just see what his interest is. Harbaugh, like, again, like, if you're Harbaugh, what could be more attractive of the potential coaching jobs? Like, think about the coaching jobs open right now. Yeah, the Jets don't have a quarterback, but you look at all those other jobs, the quarterback situation ain't exactly pretty. Carolina doesn't have a quarterback. The Broncos have a quarterback, but are paying him a stupid amount of money, and you have to fix Russell Wilson. The Colts don't have a quarterback, or it looks like a quarterback plan probably will not be high enough to get one of the great quarterbacks. The only team that might be slightly better for a weird way is the Texans, and here's why. The Texans don't have any structure. The Texans have the number one pick, and the Texans play in a god-awful division. The only reason I think the Texans might be somewhat attractive for someone like Payne or Harbaugh would be if they get full control. Now, I don't love coaches being GMs. It doesn't really work in the NFL, but that could be, like, if they want a full power play, that's the only reason the Texans, like, you look, if you're Harbaugh, like, if you're Harbaugh and the Jets can get Carr, I think you win 11 games next year at the minimum with that defense and with this talent. I think Harbaugh's that good of a coach. So, look, I'm not saying you fire Saul, but you at least broach Harbaugh and you broach the subject and you go, hey, any interest? Because they're clear head coaches. He has no idea what he's doing. It's hard because a part of me gets the ire for LaFleur. I don't think LaFleur's done himself any favors as the OC in developing these quarterbacks. But on the other end of the spectrum, these quarterbacks are missing wide open throws. The guys are getting open. Even yesterday, White was missing open throws. And I don't think it's like I defend LaFleur a lot. There are a lot of things I don't like about LaFleur, but again, the guys are getting open. The scheme is working. It's just they don't have the quarterback that can execute and pull the trigger. Rex Ryan will now have this team lifeless. Look, we wax poetically about Rex, and I get it, but do we also remember the last 4 years of Rex? I mean, that wore pretty thin, and there were games where the Jets defense did not show up, and there are games where this team did not show up, and there were games where the Jets would have a lead, and Rex, with that vaunted defense of his, the defensive mastermind in the NFL, would let that team walk down the field. So, look, I get the loving of Rex Ryan. I get the success he had here. But we also remember Rex Ryan took over a team that, if Brett Favre's shoulder didn't fall off, could have been the number one team potentially in the NFL that year, or the number one seed in the AFC at one point. And Mangini did an unbelievable job getting players in there. Like, he won with a team that was ready to go. He was ready to win with a team that was pretty much was ready to win. And you saw what happened when that team kind of got past its peak, when the guys started getting older and Rex had to bring in new talent and Rex had to add new pieces and Rex had to adjust. It fell apart. Let's see. Look, I get the frustration with Douglas. Has Douglas hit home runs in free agency? No, but like, people, I disagree with this to an extent. Like, people are saying, oh, he's handing out bad contracts. He's handing out bad contracts. No, bad contracts is Maccagnan with Trumaine Johnson, where you had dead cap on the salary for years. This was the first year Trumaine Johnson wasn't on the Jets cap. A bad contract is the Mosley contract, where you vastly overplayed the market value and offer guaranteed money. The Douglas contracts are not bad contracts. If you notice, Carl Lawson can pretty much cut and save 12 to 15 million. Oh, Corey Davis after 2 years. Can cut and save about 12 to 50 million. Joe Douglas front loads a contract for the first 2 years. He basically gives 2-year guaranteed contracts. All the rest of the money is dummy money where he can get out. What is the bad contract that he has signed? Have the players been disappointing? Sure, but there's not a contract you're like, oh, that contract's horrible. Oh, that contract stunk the Jets. That contract is just it's killed them, and they're not able to. Like, the Jets have been in a good financial position, and the Jets have been in a position too where they at least have some cap space. Maccagnan put this team in cap hell. The Giants are in cap hell because Gettleman signed Galladay. Galladay is a bad contract. You want a great example? Corey Davis's contract was $37 million for 3 years. Kenny Galladay's was like a 4 or 5 year deal with fully guaranteed money, and the Giants are stuck with that albatross of a contract. The Jets, Corey Davis, okay, we can let him go. It's not the end of the world. Look, I get Richard just proving he's giving out these contracts to get out of him, meaning he doesn't believe in what he can get. No, I think what he's doing is he's not getting trapped with bad contracts. Maccagnan got bad contracts. Tannenbaum with bad contracts. Like, think about it. This was the first year. Douglas has been here, what? This is his 4th year? This is the first year he didn't have Trumaine Johnson on his books. So for the first 3 years as a GM, he still had the goddamn Trumaine Johnson contract. He has the C.J. Mosley contract still on the books for Mike Maccagnan. The worst contract on the Jets is C.J. Mosley. Who signed that contract? Oh, it was Mike Maccagnan. It wasn't Joe Douglas. Joe Douglas also didn't give $18 million to a box safety in Seattle who hasn't played a game this year since week 1. Joe Douglas hasn't gotten trapped with bad contracts. Like, go back to last free agency. The top 10 contracts, 5 of the contracts you go, not exactly great. Not good. Not good contracts. Like, you look at like the biggest free agent contracts in the NFL last year. Who was it? Christian Kirk. That was a contract. I'm like, really? We're giving him that much money. We're giving him that deal? Okay, I guess. I mean, what was the worst? Like, again, the Jets haven't had a bad like CJ Uzomah, $24 million. It's not the worst contract in the world. Even Laken Tomlinson, it's $27 million guaranteed, but it's guaranteed not past next season. They're paying less for him than Brandon Sheriff, and Sheriff has not been good this year. I mean, you want to say bad contracts? DJ Reed's playing at a Pro Bowl level, and they're paying him $11 million a year, and he's 25 years old. Is that a bad contract? Was that a bad free agency move? I don't think so. Anytime, Kev. I'm here. I'm your Jets therapy, basically. So, and it's been a while because it's gotten dark outside. You know that. So, but again, I love you guys. We'll have plenty more content this offseason. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. You join us after the live stream. Put your questions. I'll answer them in the next video. But again, we will have plenty of videos. Players Jets can cut, financial situations, players to target, and of course, draft talk. You know, if you're on this channel, I talk ad nauseum about the draft. I do draft breakdowns, Senior Bowl analysis. I do 7-round mock drafts. What Jets channels give you 7-round mock drafts to sink your teeth into? I'll tell you, this guy does. So make sure you are here this whole offseason. And look, I agree with Melvin. I think they're a quarterback away from the playoffs. The Jets had the worst quarterback. Like, what's a worse quarterback situation in the NFL this year? I'll wait. Who had worse luck with injuries, performance, like for the entire season. Like, oh wait, who had a worse? Like the only team I could mention is the Colts, maybe. What other team had a worse quarterback situation than the Jets? Can't think of one. Joe Douglas guys out bad contracts and turned them into draft picks. Yeah, like I agree. He doesn't hit home run to make these. See, I disagree with you. Like you hit home runs in the draft. Like you build through the draft. Like you supplement a roster for free agency. I mean, great example. New England 2 years ago spent $300 million in free agency. Outside of Matthew Judon, who's been good for them? Remind me. And where are the Patriots now? I don't think the Patriots are in a better spot than the Jets. I don't think they have a better roster than the Jets. I mean, Miami broke the bank this offseason to bring in Tyreek Hill. They broke not only their draft capital, they broke the bank. Guess what? I said this was the year for Miami to go all in. And you know what's funny? Jets are probably in a better situation because they have more draft capital going forward, more cap space, and they know they're moving on. They're getting a new quarterback. What's Miami doing with Tua? Is Tua even going to play again? Like, we don't know. Obi Trier. Yeah, but the thing though is like I do think that's a reason why I put the Saleh thing on the table, because you can't tell me we're seeing the success there. And the Giants went through coaches worse than the Jets. And it's working. It's like find the right coach. We usually do basically after the Jets. So during the offseason, what I'll try to do, and I'll put this on there too. I usually like to doing midday shows. I'll put a poll up on the community page in the channel. Like I'll ask, like, which days do you want my weekly show? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday? Like, because again, I'll try to fit it in when it works best for everyone. Yeah, and look, JD went from the worst roster probably in the NFL. Like when he started, I mean, who was the Jets' number one receiver? Who was the Jets' number one player? Probably Le'Veon Bell. Oh yeah, I go full out, man. 7-round mock drafts, I bang it. If you're new to the channel, like again, I'm pretty accurate with some of these drafts too. Like I had Jermaine Johnson tie to the Jets a lot last season, was right on that. I thought they'd be leaning a little bit more Michael London, but they ended up going with Garrett Wilson. A lot of the day 3 and 4 picks I really love to do. Max Mitchell was a surprise though for me. I appreciate that. I try to be a man of the people. We had this year. I think Quan Alexander was a good signing. They got him. I think he's been a solid fill-in. They didn't cut rankings. I think rankings has been good. I don't think Whitehead, I think, is disappointing for people, but I don't think Whitehead. I think Whitehead is what he is. He's a starting safety. I don't think that the Jets paid him, but if you notice, they didn't pay him like to be an all-star safety. They paid him to be a starting safety, and that's what he is. I think the Jets fans were expecting more, but I think Whitehead's just a solid safety. I don't think it was that bad. I'm just going through my head of the free agency signings. Who else was a free agency signing this offseason? I'm just trying to go through it in my head really quick. I think Quan was a good pickup for the Jets. Bam Knight, I know, was an undrafted free agency, but I think he's been a really nice find for the Jets. I think they've done a good job with the tight ends. I think the tight end room's a lot better. And look, I give them credit. Like when they acted quickly bringing Dwayne Brown. I mean, Dwayne Brown hasn't been great this year, but he's been admirable with his injury. And look, the Jets would be in a lot worse position. I mean, the Jets, as soon as Mackay went down within 24 hours, they brought in Dwayne Brown. As soon as AVT went down, I mean, they're trying. I mean, they're at least aggressive. When someone goes down, they try to go and get a piece. And I give them credit for that. And Tomlinson, look, again, I think next year's going to be really telling. If he's bad next year, you cut him. The wonder is because he had a bad left tackle next to him. It's a good question. I mean, the left tackle position has not been good for the Jets this year. I also think George Fant's not going to be back. I think Fant's played himself out. I think Fant's played himself. It's funny. Fant went from getting a left tackle extension to basically being off this team. Let's see. What was your last 2022 mock draft. Let me try to take a trip down memory lane. If you give me a second, I can tell you. So there was a lot. So, hmm. The last 7 rounders, so that I think this is right about 8 months ago. So I did a bunch of 3-round mock drafts. Then I did a 7. I'm just trying to make sure because that's in the videos. I'm making sure there wasn't a live. I might have done like a live uh mock draft. I'm just trying to make sure I didn't miss any. Yeah, I did a whole grade. Yeah, I did the last ones were live. So I did the 7-round ones. They also asked me two guys because I did the ones live. Uh Tell me if you want this. So I used to do it. So I did like a lot more production into it, like with the players' pictures and stuff. But again, the thing with those mock drafts is they take me longer to produce as opposed to just jumping on the live stream and just giving you my recent board. I can also give you boards within this video now and in the graph. So I can do that for future reference. Just let me know like what style of video would you like to see going forward. I mean, I feel like you just at the end of the day would like the content. I can do live. Might not be as pretty, but I can get you more content out that way. Whereas if I have to go the other way, I do shows on the Mets. I haven't had the chance to do it. I've been busy the last couple of weeks, but I will be doing a lot more on the Mets as we go through there. Let's see. My final Jets mock draft. Let's see who I had them going with. Should put the graphics up there. That would have been helpful. I don't know why I didn't have the graphics. Again, I think I was just getting used to the new platform a little bit. Let's see. All right. Well, one of the Jets I had the Jets going after Christian Watson in a lot of these mock drafts in the second round, and I guess history shows I probably was right on that one. So this was an early mock draft, a 7-rounder. Let's see what I had there. I had Jermaine Johnson going to the Jets with the first pick, and one of the reasons I kept saying that was I had Jermaine Johnson going 1. I had Jameson Williams going in this mock draft was before the injury. So I had Jermaine, Jameson. I had them trading. I always had them doing a trade back in, which I guess they did for Breece Hall, and they did to get Jermaine Johnson. I always had them in every mock draft having at least 3 first-round picks, so I was right on that. I had them trade back in for Traylon Burks to get 2 receivers. I really liked Bernard Ryman for a lot of these picks. Chad Muma was someone I had the Jets targeting in the middle rounds. I really liked his ability, especially to get up the field, to play linebacker, and I thought he'd be a good complement to CJ. And basically, I had him as the eventual replacement to CJ Mosley. I think the first one I had Traylon Burks, the Jets a lot. I had just because of the versatility, I thought they could use him as like a Deebo Samuel type. I had Christian Watson, the Jets, and a lot. Cole Strange was someone I really liked the Jets. I constantly mocked him to the Jets in the 3rd round, where a lot of people thought he would go because his ability to play guard. And I had him basically being the replacement center for the Jets. Another player I had a lot was Jake Ferguson, the tight end out of Wisconsin. So, like, those were a couple of examples of some of the players in the draft that I had them targeting a lot. And basically, I know for the fact the last 3 mock drafts, like, and I'll be frank, I didn't have Sauce in any mock draft just because I thought the Jets felt that they weren't going to need a corner, and I felt the Jets with the first pick were going to go offensive tackle because of the Mekhi Becton health. Like, I constantly had them going with the kid the Panthers took the names just escaped me at the top of my head. I basically had him every pick. I had the Jets going tackle. It was basically tackle and either Jermaine Johnson at 10 or a wide receiver at 10. Or actually, no, it was tackle Jermaine Johnson at 10, trade back into the first round to get a receiver. But of course, it was crazy with the wide receivers. I really like Christian Watson out of North Dakota State. And the reason I kept going to the Jets was because the Jets coached him at the Senior Bowl, and I thought that connection would eventually lead him to the Jets. They got Garrett Wilson. And look, I think that Garrett Wilson has been unbelievable. And I've been wrong about Sauce Gardner. I knew Sauce was going to be a great player. I just thought that the Jets were going to go offensive tackle because you need to figure out with Zach Wilson. But they've gone different ways. Just say you want meaningful games in December. Hey, we got meaningful games in December. The problem was they couldn't win any of the meaningful games in December. I wanted Kayvon in wide receiver. I don't know if I changed that. I didn't think of Breece Hall. Yeah, I thought the Jets were going to go running back in the 4th round because, again, I was going off the San Francisco principle where they try to get running backs in day 3 and plug them in. I thought that that's where the Jets would do it, find a complement to Michael Carter on day 3. And again, a lot of it's too because I usually have the Jets drafting 2 receivers or 1 or 2 receivers because, again, at the time, Denzel Mims, I wasn't even sure was going to make the roster. And the other thing, too, that I kept one player I did actually have in a lot was Jeremy Ruckert. I had Jeremy Ruckert going to the Jets usually in the 3rd or 4th round. Because, again, the Senior Bowl connection, the need for a tight end. And I think he had the most upside of any tight end in the draft last year. And Jets ended up getting him. It's funny because I overlooked a couple of the day 4 players. The day 3 players that the Jets got. But it was interesting, though, because I constantly was looking at receivers, and I thought the Jets would go heavy offensive line. I usually have them drafting two offensive linemen in my mocks. They only drafted 1 last year. So I'll quickly. No. No. Correction, I thought trade down from 4 and JJ at 10. I thought trade down at 4, but again, last year I didn't see a team having the need. There wasn't a quarterback. The only thing I could see is if a team wanted to jump the Giants for an offensive lineman, but it worked out well for the Giants. They got the pass rusher they wanted. They got the tackle that they wanted. But unfortunately, no one was going to come up with the Jets. Yeah, Walker, I thought would have been a good pick, but I in my mocks, I have him go in the 2nd round. I thought he was the number. It flipped. I kept having Kenneth Walker and Breece number 1 and 2. I put Walker 1 just because Breece Hall had a really great year, but Kenneth Walker was consistent at Michigan State. He was a bell cow at Michigan State. He had a little bit longer career and a little bit longer term success. So that's the only reason I put Breece Hall behind Walker. But it wasn't like it was 1A, 1B. It was if you put Breece Hall ahead of Kenneth Walker, I wasn't gonna be like, oh no, I can't see that. I'm like, no, I can see it. We all have different tastes. I tend to look at production a little bit more. I know a lot of it's upside, but I really do like valuing production. I also really value guys that are on the field. If you're a 30, 40 game starter, especially as an offensive lineman, I tend to bump you up on the board because you show you can play and you show you're reliable. Where, yeah, you could have a great senior year. You might have all the talent in the world, but if you miss 2 games in your senior year in 1 year, I can't trust you to play in a 17-game NFL season. Actually, that you bring up, I had Tariq Woolen actually high on my board. There's videos I made where I said, look, I think he's one of the most underrated players in the draft. I love Tariq Woolen in the draft. I actually had the Jets a couple times taking him in the 4th round because I thought, this was my thought with Woolen was I didn't think they'd take a corner in the 1st round, but I thought taking Woolen made sense for the Jets in the 3rd or 4th round. Because again, Woolen, I really thought was going to be I was surprised he fell all the way to where he did. I really thought he was going to be a day 2 pick. I really did because I know he dropped because he's a converted receiver, but you look at his measurables and how off the charts they were at the Senior Bowl, the fluidity he has, and look, they don't make corners. He's the closest thing to Sauce we saw in the whole draft. Him and Sauce are different. They don't build corners that are that big, that tall, that built. They're not skinny corners. They're not frail corners. They're built corners. And not only at that size, but they can both run at that size. Usually when you get a corner that big, they might have straight line speed, but they don't have that intermediate speed or that cutting speed or that, but both of them do. And I think that's the reason why you're seeing both of them are being considered for the defensive rookie of the year. Um, I think it was a bit of a risk. I would have swung too. Again, like when you take risks in the draft and you miss, that's the problem. Like, if only I could redraft. Here's the thing. I don't think you're going to redraft 2022. Like, I think the Jets. Like, what would you change? I can't think of a move. Like, the only thing I think Jet fans would maybe change about the 2022 draft would be. Look, I still think Jermaine Johnson has a really good upside. It could be a really good player. I know some Jet fans like uh, they will have liked a little bit more production out of him. But I still think he was a really good player. I'm just trying to look to see who was on the board where Ruckert was. Yeah, Ruckert went 101. Damian Pierce went after him, but the Jets already had that. One guy I really loved was Perion Winfrey from Cleveland. I was actually screaming about the Jets drafting him. But and then also the Jets missed out on Daniel Falali, the tackle from Minnesota, who I love because he was like 6'9" and 380 pounds. He went before Mitchell, but Mitchell was a good pick. And then Clemens. I mean, Clemens wasn't really on my radar just because of how old he was and because of some of the off the field issues that he had. So I thought that would be a red flag for the Jets because they typically didn't draft those guys under Douglas in the first 2 years. But really, like, I can't think of someone that the Jets overdraft. Like, I'm even looking in the draft, like after Rucker, like I'm seeing who's on the board, and I'm not seeing anyone you're like, wow, other than obviously Woolen, but they drafted Sauce Gardner, so they weren't going to draft another corner. And they also signed DJ. So, yeah, I mean, Isaiah Likely's a tight end I really liked. Big receiving tight end. Yeah. Yeah, there's Tariq in round 5. Because again, don't forget the Jets didn't have any later picks after that. No, I don't think the Jets would redo the 20. I really don't think they do the 22 draft. Pick one and Kenneth Lair. Yeah, but no, you can't go off of that, Kev. I mean, you can't go off of that. Like we look back in retrospect, you hope, but then we also would criticize the Jets for not getting playmakers earlier. I mean, look, I really like Trevor Penning. A part of me was hoping he'd be there at 25. I really love Tyler Linderbaum. I knew the Jets probably weren't going to do that. They got great value for Jermaine Johnson. I still think Jermaine Johnson is going to be one of the better defensive players in this draft. And they got him with the 26th pick. And they didn't give up a ton to go up and get Jermaine. They didn't give up a ton to go up and get Breece Hall. I mean, they got a home run hitter in Breece Hall. Like, I love Christian Watson. I think Watson's been great. But look, Garrett Wilson's been just as good, if not better. I think Garrett Wilson's been the best receiver out of this draft. I mean, the Jets came away with arguably the best corner, even though Tariq Woolen's good. They came away with the best corner, the best you can make the case the best running back, even though Walker has been good this year, but you can at least debate it with that. I think Wilson's the best receiver. So you got the best receiver, best cornerback, one of the top 2 running backs. And even like the pass rushers, like even Kayvon, I know he had that really great game. He's come on lately, but I mean, he missed a couple games early. He still has 4 sacks this year. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson's been unbelievable. I mean, he's been the best pass rusher in this draft, but I mean, George Karlaftis has been good for Kansas City. But even as a limited player, I mean, Jermaine Johnson still has 2.5 sacks. I mean, Kayvon's been playing all the time he has 4. You look at Karlaftis playing all the time 5.5. Trayvon Walker's only got 3.5. I mean, Jermaine Johnson's basically been a situational pass rusher, and he's been just as effective. And in terms of his win rate, he's been higher than those guys. So look, I don't think Jermaine Johnson was a bad pick. Tua may never play again, so that's not going to happen. I know. I keep up with it though, Kev. But again, guys, thanks so much for joining us here today. I appreciate you guys. We will have more Jets content for a big off season. There's going to be a lot to discuss with quarterbacks, the draft, and free agency. You're not going to want to miss it here. So make sure you hit that subscribe button here to Rich Sports Talk so you don't miss any of the latest Jet news. And we'll be back to recap the final game in Miami this upcoming week. The good, the bad, the ugly, and where the Jets, when they finish, will have their draft picks set and how that could impact them on draft day. Thanks, guys, so much for joining us as always. Really appreciate it as we look forward to now the Jets 2023 offseason. It will be definitely an interesting one. So I appreciate all the comments as always. Until next time, this is Rich Sports Talk. We'll see you later.